Welcome to Last Week on Instagram. This is a series where we take a deeper dive into our posts. When we make posts on Instagram, we are trying to beat the algorithm, so they are usually at a max around 10 seconds long. Our captions are also a little shorter. So what we want to do here is take a deeper dive into these posts and give a little bit more explanation than we can give on Instagram. So let's jump straight into it. So our first post we are going to look at is the DPS timing for sprint breaststroke versus the sprint timing. Now, the difference between these two, deep distance per stroke I would call it more the traditional breaststroke, right? You reach, you kick, and then you glide. Now, when this happens, we're going to take a pause real quick on the DPS timing. Let's get it right before the kick. Right, so usually you have your extension already, your head's still up, and you're trying to kick and use the weight of the head, the weight of gravity on the head to drive the body downhill with that kick. You know, that's one of our skills in our world record content called Gravity for Speed. But we're trying to get downhill on that breaststroke and then glide it out. Here, Sony swims fantastically flat breaststroke. You know, there's no undulation, so she doesn't necessarily try and get downhill because she has a great line and doesn't need to take advantage of other forces because people can't keep up with her as it is, right? So you don't need to break or introduce something new if people aren't even competitive with you. But the distance per stroke timing, we're trying to kick ourselves into our line like we see here. Now, the sprint timing, we are trying to kick the body into the line, right? So when we get here, we can see that that kick is loaded and the head is up, the arms are still extending. So as the knees extend, the body is going to reach the line, boom, at the same time. All right? Hitting the line at the same time. Now, the backstory on this, and if you're in the Rakely Technique Solutions, you've seen this in the Why It Works section where I explain this. I believe I explained it. Yeah, I do. So I went to the Olympic Training Center when I was swimming professionally with Team Elite, and we were watching, I think it was Katie Malley's breaststroke. It was mine or hers, and they were using like the velocity meter, and you could see this huge like fall off a cliff, and it's obviously during the glide. So I remember Dr. G was like, you need to cut this out, right? Now, obviously, gliding is a staple of breaststroke. So you can't exactly cut it out. Well, then I'm thinking, okay, so if we do cut it out, I'm sorry, guys, if those of you who don't know, for whatever reason, when I'm off my camera, my nose starts itching. It's like we can't eliminate the glide, right? You can shorten it, but you can't eliminate it. Well, I'm like, okay, well, if we did, right? Thought experiment. If we did, what would that look like? And my first thought is summer league breaststrokers who do just the water bug thing, right? Where there's no glide, there's always a propulsive force, whether it's the kick or it's the pull, right? When their head goes down, they pull, and then their head's up, and then they kick with the shoot, and then they pull, head up, kick. So there's always one of those things going. And then we know also in breaststroke, you're supposed to hit your line. So that was kind of how we figured this out is we moved the kick so far early in the sequence that we ended up hitting our line before the body submerged. So as you hit the surface of the water, you hit your line, boom, and you can get right into your next stroke. So basically we took the whole breaststroke and put it in the air. Right, so by the time your face hits, you've completed your shoot, you completed your kick, time to pull. Instead of before you complete your shoot, you complete your kick as you go underwater and then you glide. And that's where sprint breaststroke timing came up. You know, summer leaguers are right. Those 25 breaststrokers are sprint 25 breaststrokers are right. All right, so let's move on to our next one. Okay, so this is from the Night Swim podcast. So it's a clip, not necessarily what we were talking about at full depth, but basically straight on freestyle. I call it giving a kid a rocket launcher and expecting them not to blow stuff up. And the reason why this is, and there's a really important comment here. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, it's not him. Not him. Here we go. It's not even that simple. As I see, there are hundreds of variations of straight arm. I don't know about hundreds. He's a little, not, what's the word? Hyperbolic. Multiply your options. Okay, yeah, I guess when you multiply or combine things, you start getting up there. Angle of elbow, elevation, degree above the water, hand throw from side or over the top. I agree on that one. People don't really talk enough about that difference. Bruno Fratus versus Frederick Bousquet, right? Bruno swings super wide and low. Speed of recovery, core rotation degree, symmetry of core rotation, arm speed, arm angle. And the problem, he's wrong, right? And this is something I've also realized in life, so, jot this one down, is that everybody is entitled to their opinion, and you can be wrong. I mean, you can have the wrong opinion. You can have the wrong opinion. You're not entitled to be correct. And this is incorrect. It's not even that simple. Yeah, it is, because a lot of times what happens when you teach kids straight arm, nobody disciplines them. And I've said this multiple times. It's in the course. The straight arm content just went live in December. And it's the only time where you get a fingertip clean entry, right? If you're entering fingertips first, you're always going to have clean hands. So if I'm swimming straight arm, I can't rotate. 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 Now I can rotate. And enter fingertips first, shoulder or elbow second, shoulder last. Right? If I roll too early, bicep drags through, hands in the air, trapping bubbles on my palm. So if the arm is straight, no matter what variation it is, your hand is higher than your elbow, it's higher than your shoulder, you are highly exposed to dragging not even dragging, a drag would just be it's stuck. You're pushing yourself backwards. Okay? So when you give a kid a rocket launcher, expect them not to blow themselves up, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I wonder what he replied with. It looks like I have 2 replies, mine and then I'm guessing his. Yeah, we're going to respond to him real quick. Doesn't matter. We are talking about a kid, usually undisciplined, and / or coaches, let's do this together. And coaches who are undisciplined to that level of detail. If you think I'm lying, teach it to you're underestimating the masses' natural programming to rotate to learn to swim without rotation and then how much elevation effect? Okay, sorry guys. Sorry I had to drag y'all through that. Here's a comment. Oh, I guess you can't. Yeah, you can. All right, so I'm talking about a kid usually undisciplined or coaches who are undisciplined level of detail. You're underestimating the masses' natural programming. Elevation does There's a more vertical posture. Okay, sometimes you gotta hit out the park on them. So yeah, it's just a bad idea. It's an unnecessary issue. Teach the swimmers how to use their body correctly, because even with straight arm, they still need to know how to use their body correctly. And while they're learning with the bent elbow, you can at least guarantee that they're going in fingertips first. They may still drag their bicep, but eventually that elbow is never going to be in earlier than the hand. All right, so we have sprint 50 fly versus sprint 50 free. So I noticed this at the 2011 World Championships. I think I even have it in here. Half the field was 50 butterflies. Yeah, 2011. Half of the 50 fly final were elite 50 freestylers. Right, and what I noticed is it looked like they were swimming freestyle. Like they had this bent elbow recovery coming over the surface that was almost like crashing down. It wasn't swinging forward and then going down with the body. And what we see here when we look at Schooling and when we look at Sjöström is if you look at their body line, so their hips to their head, let's see if I can pause it right on cue, is they are always, oh, missed it. That was a good one too. Right there. Right, we can see the hips, head, hands. Right, they're in front of their chest so they can go right into that pull, just like you would in freestyle, right into that pull. Gotta see if we can get Joseph. So Joseph reaches a little bit more behind the head, but then we see instantly right next to the head, and then quickly gets his chest line, or his arms in front of his chest line. Right there. Ah, of course, now we gotta go through the whole thing again. Right there. All right, so they're getting into this spot. It's a lot flatter of a stroke. They're cranking their knees, and they're just trying to reach forward and get here. And it's very unsustainable, because what makes fly sustainable is your ability to get your butt up and then snap your hips to your hands, so that way your arms don't have to pull the whole way back to your hips. Your hips can come in and close that distance and give you more power too, right? And that's what makes fly efficient. Now, you don't do that, your arms got to pull the whole way. And that's why a lot of, especially younger swimmers or swimmers learning fly or non-flyers, struggle with fly. It's because their arms are doing most of the work every stroke, whereas some of that effort should be preserved by using the butt and the hips correctly. All right, so here, this athlete is learning their sprint freestyle. They're learning how to use their hips. So what we have, once they've mastered their anchor, the catch, and their shoulder rolls, we engage the hips. So here you'll see the athlete, the hand is on the opposite hip as they roll. Then they're going to tap their top hip and finish. So I call this side swiping, because you're going to always feel like you're pulling and then you're swiping past your hip, like we see right there. So here he's going from the bottom hip to the top hip, and this is what develops a straight line pull. So a lot of coaches sometimes will talk about the S pull, don't do that. And I'm not saying don't do it, but this is the S pull, right? You're technically, if you're on your side, your arm is out here. You're going to pull, and that hand is going to come in as you roll, right? So here when he's flat, the hand is even with the shoulder. So he went from out here to even with the shoulder, and now he's going to go to the opposite hip and in. So there is this curvature that goes on with freestyle. Now, the top of the S would be I enter, and then I'm out this way as I roll, right? I'm this way. Now, the roll makes it straight, and then I catch, I'm in, bottom hip, top hip, swipe. And what we see from that is a straight line pull. And I remember I had athletes who used to swim super far out here, and the way that we actually corrected that was having them do an S pull where they literally overcompensated, dragged their bicep across their face, and then their arm literally was traveling in a straight line down their pull. So it's not the S pull and the straight line pull, they are the same thing to a very strong degree. All right, and then our last video We got the gallop or the hybrid. I think the gallop is a technique mistake caused by the arm coming on top of the head, and that weight sinks the swimmer. And Phelps, I think, is particularly, I'm not going to say, I guess bad may be the word. I think it's a mistake, so we'll say bad at this, where his arm comes in, and then you'll see his head come up right there. Whereas people who are sprinters and maybe 100 freestyles who use a sprint, stroke, and even stroke, and even 500 freestyles who use a distance per stroke, even stroke, their head stays level and they come around the side of their head. Boom. Or what almost looks like a round. And their head stays level because there's no weight on top of their head. So that sinking effect is more of a product of that. Now, there's a way that we teach it. You know, I'm working on the course right now for Gallop. There's a way that we teach it that we take that force and we make it go forward down the pool instead of having it go up and down. So we kind of take the both of them and combine them together, because I do like the surge that comes out of a gallop stroke when they get underwater. So we took it and leveled it out. But yeah, after that, it's just one side is distance per stroke where you're almost coming in, catch-up drill, and then you pull, and then your opposite hands, pull, breathe, sprint style. So it's just a combination of both of them, and that's why I think the actual technique should be called a hybrid when it's done correctly, because you're not resting that arm on the head and sinking yourself. But for communication purposes, a lot of people will call it a gallop. But when done correctly, it's a hybrid stroke. So that is it, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you turn on that notification bell. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. You know, this was, I think, a pretty good technique last week on Instagram. So it can definitely help out a lot of people. And you liking and subscribing goes a long way. And sharing, of course, right, goes a long way in helping us get this information to people for free. So help me out with that. And thanks for hanging out, guys. Peace.